Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Canadian Immigration Pros podcast. I am your host, Josh Schachnow, Canadian immigration lawyer and CEO here at Visto.ai. Very happy to be joined by Madhur Parashar. Madhur, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Very excited. We're going to cover a wide range of topics that I know, based on your LinkedIn posts, you are very passionate about. So I think this will be a heated, in a good way, positive, informational conversation. Very excited to jump in. Before we do, can you just give a quick introduction, a little bit more about yourself and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. My name is Madhur Parashar. I'm a licensed Canadian immigration consultant, RCIC. Relatively new to the industry. So I launched my practice about summer of 2023. So it's my first year in. And originally my background is in the IT and finance consulting industries. But I've always been passionate about immigration because I myself am an immigrant and to a couple of countries. I was in the US before this and then moved to Canada. Always been helping my friends and family with immigration queries. So I said, expand that scope and help the world and do it legally. So be a professionally designated person. That's how I became an RCIC.
Awesome. And we're going to dive a little bit into that, right? The
Yeah.
regulated professionals and all that kind of stuff. Certainly been an exciting first year for you, right? I mean, there's a lot going on. There's also a lot of confusion. There's also a lot of big expectations for what the heck is going to happen for the rest of 2024 and beyond. But let's start first with the international student space. As most people know, in mid and well, I guess closer to the end of January, IRCC made the big announcement, amongst others, to cap the number of study permits for international students in 2024 and 2025. I'll give a quick caveat. Madhur, you should definitely follow him on LinkedIn. We'll include links to that in the description. Very, very opinionated man, which is makes for a great podcast guest. So, Madhur, what do you
Yeah.
think about the changes that were announced? More specifically, I guess, the cap, and we can also discuss any of the additional changes that have been made to the international student space as well.
All right. So I have a very long answer here. So I'll try my best to
Buckle up.
frag my thoughts. Buckle up, everybody. Very true. I'm very opinionated. I have a strong opinion on this. First of all, I want to clarify this was necessary. Okay. It's painful, but at some point you have to put down your ice cream and eat your veggies, right? So this is Minister Mark Miller feeding us our veggies. And it's been a wild party last few years. Study permits went out of control. The whole industry exploded. So this was bound to happen, right? The more out of control you go before, the more painful the medicine is later on. The bigger the party, the bigger the hangover, right? So this was bound to happen. I just strongly disagree with how it was rolled out and implemented. Just a
Mm.
random cap came out overnight. The number 364K. Why 364K? Don't know. Maybe we'll know in
Well,
the
he did
future.
he did warn about it, right? I too am surprised at how quickly and bluntly he just said, "Boom, here's your cap." But he did
Right.
kind of in their defense, he did hint at it, right, previously?
Hinted at negotiating with the provinces to sort
Right.
this out. Otherwise, we have to do something about it, right? So
Right.
that I interpreted that, if you see my LinkedIn post, as a negotiating tactic. I'm pushing you by saying that, hey, you're not going to like it later on. So don't blame me. So I'll do this. So he gave them a year, right? Last summer, he said, I will give it a year for provinces to get their house in order. Otherwise, we'll do something. And in 6 months, boom, there's a cap, right? So I'm not sure he was negotiating in good faith.
Right.
So, or maybe behind the scenes, something happened. Maybe in 6 months, he gave them like little micro goals in 6 months and they just blew him off. So he said, okay, fine. That pain needs to be brought in sooner, right? So whatever happened, I disagree with the rollout. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh no, this was necessary. This is a good step and all that. Mind you, I agree with that. I agree that something needed to be done. But there is a way to execute things in a complex ecosystem, right? It's like a Jenga tower. You take out the one block, you don't know which way the tower will collapse, on whose head will it fall, and so on, right? So I think massive systems should be incrementally changed, not one whack where you take out the whole thing, right? So people think I'm against the cap, or I'm against all the reforms, like, no PGWP for diploma mills and all. So believe me, I'm not against it. I am pro policy. I am not so convinced that the way the rollout is going is a good way to implement it.
Right.
So
I want to dig in a second to the what you do's and what you don't likes. I
yeah.
personally, I agree with a lot of what you said, although I think I err more on the side of this was good because I
Mhm.
think the industry got so out of hand that
Yeah.
it needed a shock to the system. And I think this was a big shock. Is the cap the perfect cap? Should he have given them more of a heads up, especially with something like the attestation letters? Probably.
Mhm.
But you know what? I don't know. I think IRCC has been playing reactive for the last 8 years. They've
Yeah.
let that industry run wild, and crazy amounts of money were made and crazy activities and behaviors. I kind of like the shock to the system. Maybe it'll wake a bunch of people up. It'll get rid of a bunch of the crap, pardon my French, and
Yeah.
and let's see. Anyways, so going into specifics, Madhur, what were the parts of the rollout that you liked and what were the parts that you didn't like?
So first of all, my thought is maybe a cap number, hard cap, was not even necessary. Like, look at the individual changes. Like, if you say, okay, we double the funds requirement. Okay, so if there were 10,000 students were going to apply, just a sample number, 10,000. The moment you say double the funds requirement, that takes out like out of 100,000, like 20,000 right there. Like, people are just going to walk away. Can't do 20,000 by, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, oh, spouses not allowed to work for diploma degrees, right? That takes out another 10, 20,000 or so. And then you say, okay, the public-private partnerships not allowed PGWP. That takes out another few. So if you
Yeah.
have enough of if you pull enough of these levers, you'll accomplish a cap anyways, right? My first reaction was, wow, after all of these changes, you don't need 360K. Maybe those 360K might not get filled. But then I quickly corrected myself. I was like, no, there is enough demand out there. It'll get filled. All right. But if you pull enough levers, you don't simultaneously need a cap. Probably. Probably. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I've not sure.
That's what I thought they were doing when they announced the double of the proof of funds in December, which I thought was, much needed. I was thinking that exact same thing. I was like, okay, probably don't need a cap if you keep just
Yeah.
making the requirements stricter and stricter. So I agree.
And all the more stricter the requirements become, the less a cap is necessary, not just because of the numbers, but also because those will ensure that only quality students come in, right? And you don't want a cap on quality, right? By
Right.
turning these levers, you're improving the quality of each incremental student that comes in. Well, if you're getting quality, why not get tons of, why cap it at 360K, right? So that's the first thing I did not understand. Like, it just seems like a very randomly picked number. Funny thing, I'll say, in one of my LinkedIn posts, I read, okay, there's not going to be a cap, because how are you even going to decide a number, right? How do you come up with a number? Are you going to conduct a multivariate analysis with 27 different variables? And, slicing up those variables by state, by region, by this, or are you just going to pick a number out of a hat? And it
Hmm.
seems like they picked a number out of a hat. So
Yeah, I'd be curious. It's a great question. I'd be curious to know if I don't think they have or maybe will share how they picked the number. Maybe my best guess would be like, did they look back over the last 5 years
mhm.
and say, hey, this year, 2019, we let in around 350, and that was pretty good. So maybe we should go back to that, right? I have no idea. I don't know if
well,
any of us will, right?
I mean, the opponents might say, why not go back 10 years, right? Or why not go back
Yeah.
7 years? So there's no right answer. Maybe someone will put in a ATIP request, get an answer like 2 years from now, and we'll know where the number came from. But the second thing I did not like about the rollout was this attestation letter, but it's not just a letter. It's not just a piece of paper. Think about what is being asked of the provinces. If I'm the education minister of a province, how am I going to give an attestation letter, right? What lies behind it is a giant mechanism. A province will be told, okay, BC, you're going to receive 150,000 study permit slots. Okay. Now, BC has to decide how to distribute those 150K, which colleges should get it, which universities should get it, which programs should get it within the colleges, right? I don't want to give 10,000, 5,000 to some XYZ college. And then the 5,000, that college takes those 5,000 and stuffs it in the most profitable course
Right.
in a course that has no relevance to the labor market, right? Some business management diploma, right? So, but the college says, "Oh, I'm making the maximum profit per student," right?
Right.
Whereas trades and nursing, they require a lot of capital investment. Right? You need infrastructure to teach those courses. They'll be like, "Yeah, I got my 5,000. I'll maximize." So the province has to decide how many per college and which courses in each college should those seats go, right? And to decide which colleges, they have to decide which ones are the quality education institutions, which ones have the infrastructure, which ones can support student housing, and so on and so forth. So think about it. They're asking each province to create a mini trusted institution framework, right? And that's pretty much
Within 2 months, right? Because
why
they want it ready by March 31st.
with they're asking the provinces to create it within 2 months while they're giving themselves 2 years to create that framework. So,
Right.
like, you know, I'll take 2 years to come up with a trust institution framework at the federal level. You guys, you go build it in 2 months. And, after mine comes into effect, I'll dissolve all your little trust institution framework. I mean, what kind of thinking is this? This is why I think the rollout is a disaster.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I do think overall, I think it's a thumbs up from IRCC, but I think the attestation letter requirement is a bit harsh, especially with the deadline. The other question I have is like, well, if this province gets 25,000 slots, does that mean you get 25,000 attestation letters? Because we all know that fewer than 100% of study permit applications get approved, right? So going further to your point, which is I think a good one. Hey, if I'm a school and I only get 5,000 of these letters,
Hmm.
I probably want to put them in the programs that will make me the most money. But then also, should I be putting them into programs that I know have a higher rate of approval with IRCC? Because once my 5,000 are up, my 5,000 are up. What if half of them get refused, right? So I wonder. I don't know if that's been answered before. I don't think I've seen an answer to it. But like if the cap is 360, shouldn't they be giving like 425,000 attestation letters knowing that there's like a 20-30% rejection rate?
Exactly. And I would assume that the visa approval rates would go up. Like right now, there's a 50% denial rate. I would assume that a person who got it approved by a college and then by the province would be pretty bona fide student. So the approval rates might start ticking up, but
Hmm.
it's never going to be 100%. It should never be 100%. Right.
Right.
So yes, they have to build in that buffer for rejection. Now, this gets complicated really fast. How about a student arrives at college A and then quickly transfers to college B? Students do this a lot. They jump around
Right.
colleges. They decide before coming to Canada, they decide, hey, I'm going to land, I'm going to jump. Now, does this college lose one of its slots? Does it get to again? Does the other college have to have an open station slot for this guy to accommodate this guy? Or transfers don't count? And in
Right.
that
Yeah.
case,
I
no,
think this really goes back to your earlier point of maybe we don't need a cap. We just need to clean everything up and get higher quality students. Because one of the counters I'd make to that is, well, they're not getting rid of, but now these private public partnerships no longer qualify you for a PGWP, which means, again, to your earlier example, overnight they're going to lose a huge chunk of demand, right? So if there's fewer students trying to go to those, basically satellite colleges like diploma mills,
yeah,
does that help us avoid? Now the other way now that I'm thinking about it is, does it actually make switching an even bigger problem because more students will actually apply to these diploma mills, and then once they get in because they know they can't get a PGWP, they'll jump to a PGWP eligible school. I don't know.
exactly.
You have any thoughts on how that might play out?
This is all like See, this is all the devil lies in the details, right? Now, if attestation letters are a one-time thing, get an attestation letter, come here, do whatever you want. If that's the problem, then all this bad behavior will start all over. Come in
Right.
on to an easy college, jump to some other college. But they say that, okay, college A, if you like student A, if you come here on this attestation letter, fill in this slot, you can jump. Or if you can only jump, the other college has not yet filled its allotted slots, right?
Right.
So then that student mobility inside Canada will be restricted. And in some ways, that's not a bad thing. Like it's like, why do you want to switch? Right? Like I never understood why do you want to switch after you've joined the college? It's
Well,
because
they do it as a strategy, right? Like you said.
right.
I do think there's probably, I don't know, 10, 20, 30% of students who genuinely they come, they start a program, oh, this isn't for me. I'd like to do a bit of a career pivot, whatever. But I
Mhm.
would wager, especially based on what I hear, that the vast majority of those switches are intentional and like you
Yeah.
said, might even be planned from before they even land in Canada, which is a huge problem. So, let
They
me ask
are.
you this. What would
Mhm.
you do if you're Minister Miller? This has been one of my favorite questions from the last couple weeks. If you are Minister Miller, we put you in the seat, right? Minister of Immigration for the next month. What would you do? Maybe not like in so far as like repealing what they've already announced, but what would
Mhm.
your next steps be to try and better improve the industry?
Okay, first of all, like, are we talking about the student cap situation or the other stuff?
International students
Okay,
specifically, yeah. And
national
then maybe
students.
we'll branch to some other topics for further into the episode.
Sure. So, okay, difficult job. Okay, it's a tough
Oh
job.
yeah.
It's easy for us to throw stones and criticize them, but yeah, being in this seat is hard. I'll acknowledge that. But I wouldn't put a hard number on it. I would stop the bad behavior, right? Target the behavior, the number will fix it, right? So,
I
what's
agree.
bad behavior number one? Bad behavior number one is all these little satellite colleges enrolling unlimited people. So, yes, rooting out their PGWP, very much warranted. I would stick with that. I would even de-designate a lot of DLIs. They're no longer DLIs because the DLIs were indiscriminately designated. Like whoever asked one got one, it seemed. Okay. So the criteria to designate as an institution as a DLI should be revisited at a federal level. Now, huge complication, education falls under provincial authority, but hey, I'm king for a day, right? So I can do what I want.
A month. You get a whole month.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. You're still a month.
Yeah.
So redo the criteria for a DLI colleges, which are, which have a campus, which can provide housing, which have quality placement, job placement records, and all that. Provide visas, mostly approve visas, mostly for genuine courses like nursing, trades, healthcare, and so on, and stop like mass approving visas for all kind of things, right? The second is somehow come up with an accreditation, not accreditation, just get this ghost consultant problem under control because that is what is sending all these, that's the machinery that is sending all these people here, right? Rather than dealing with them after they come here, okay, have some filters on the industry overseas, right? So a college, these days, a college can just close its eyes and say, hey, our recruitment partner is at fault for doing all this stuff. They have that little plausible deniability by hiring all these so-called tech platforms, which don't do anything, right? They just collect. They're just an intermediary who collect a little bit of fees, not a little bit, a lot of fees. So I would make educational institutions responsible for the behavior of their agents. That's it. They no longer get to hide behind this ed tech aggregator model, right? Where the
But how
agents
do you do that? Because like my solution is get rid of commission, right? That's where it all stems from, right?
absolutely
Why are all these ghost agents doing what they're doing? I love to take the Charlie Munger approach, which is, just follow the incentives, right?
follow.
Why are there tens of thousands of study abroad agents, ghost consultants, whatever you want to call them? It's because by feeding students into Canadian biz admin degrees at, diploma mills, they get a check for 2, 3,000 bucks a head, right? You can't
It,
even really fault them. They're just acting now. There's a whole moral and ethical part to it too, right? But there's
I
a
was
lot of people making a lot of money just using the system the way it is right now.
the more I learn about this industry, and I have quite an interest in getting started getting into this industry because I feel I can make a significant value add to the students based on my own experience. So that is something. Just a little plug. We're going to be venturing into education advising, study abroad advisory in the coming months in our target markets, which is starting with India and then branching out across Africa and Asia. So my goal in doing that is not just to expand business, but also to kind of protect these innocent students, right? These youngsters who like these little innocent people from these predatory practices. Like you rightly said, I was pretty shocked. The more I learn about this industry, the more shocked I am at how dirty it is, right? Like I never heard before that you could just make a commission by placing a student at a college seat. Like, what are we doing here? Is this education or is this like, are we filling seats at a movie theater? Right. So,
That's basically what it's become. That's what it's become, which is why I don't think anybody should be too surprised or disappointed at how harsh some of these changes are. Because there were players at so many different levels and industries basically abusing the system. Now, again, everyone's kind of allowed, again, we could talk about ethics and morals and that kind of stuff, but technically speaking, they're all playing quote unquote within the rules. There's certainly some gray area and black area behavior. For
yeah,
example, agents that create GC keys and submit it, and basically misrep for student applicants. But if you're just a study abroad agent and you're peddling programs that may not be in the student's best interest, but you're getting them into programs and then you're saying, okay, go apply for the study permit. You're like not breaking any laws, right? I don't think it's a net benefit for society, quote unquote, but you're technically not breaking any laws, right?
yeah, yeah, except like where they act as unauthorized agents and they
But if
uh,
you're not, let's take the example, the devil's advocate, right? I'm a study abroad agent and I'm a good salesman. I hang
yeah,
up I hang up a sign, and I go to dozens, hundreds of let's say I'm based in India because it's the biggest source country, and I'm a great salesman. And I go talk to hundreds of students a year, and I say, yeah, you got to go to these colleges, highest study permit approval rates. I'm going to get you into the school.
yeah,
I'm going to give you this guide, and you're going to apply for the study permit, and then you're going to go. And then you go, see you later. I don't, and then that's it, right?
yeah,
Technically, you're not breaking any laws, right?
you're,
You're working within the flawed system or not as regulated as it should be system. But yeah, I don't know if you
well,
sleep great at night, but anyways.
now, Canadian government cannot go after these people. They don't have jurisdiction. They're located far away. They're not gonna. Yeah,
They could try, but it's not worth it, right?
exactly. Not
It was
worry.
interesting to see. Did you see when the Indian government went out? I think it was a few months ago. They went
Yeah,
after like a few dozen
mhm.
shops. I wonder if that'll happen more.
And they went after it because the fraud was so brazen. These guys were duplicating manufacturing mark sheets and degrees from Indian colleges. So it was a domestic issue.
Right.
Like there's an Indian college which is telling the government, hey, there are these bunch of guys who are manufacturing degrees from my college. Go do something about it. So there was a lot of domestic pressure.
Right.
I don't know if there was Canadian pressure on cracking it down. It was a domestic racket, so they went after it. But also the government wanted to protect its image. Like you don't want India to be like the dirty destination, right? Although in some ways it is turning out. But here's the thing. Even if these education agents were not breaking the law, doing things straight, as you said, there is no there's no one to hold accountable for their actions. Who is the one that can be easily held accountable? It's the school that is getting into relationships with these people, right? So
Hmm.
you can tell the school is Canada based in in IRCC's jurisdiction. The best way to control these guys is through their benefactors in Canada,
Right. How,
and you
how
can
would you
tell.
propose? How would you suggest that they do it? Because I agree. I think it's a good move in the right direction. How do you think they could accomplish that?
They could accomplish that by mandating a direct one-to-one relationship with the agent, right? No intermediary, no ed tech, no aggregator, because the aggregator acts as like this black screen, which gives these institutions like plausible deniability. Like they don't even know who
Right.
their end agent is. I've been to, they can always say, I don't know who the end agent is. I deal with trying to stop myself from saying the name of the aggregators, but it's like I'm dealing with this education edtech platform. They've they've guaranteed me that they do all this fancy compliance stuff, so I'm not responsible for any of that, right? Whereas
Right.
everyone knows there's these edtech platforms. They just make you check some boxes, sign a few forms, and that's it, right? So this plausible deniability screen has to be removed. Agents, institutions have to be directly responsible, have to have direct relationships with each of their agents, and be responsible for their accountable for their behavior in the home countries, right? So then schools will know that they have certain liabilities for the behavior of these guys. So they will pick quality agents. They will monitor them. They will give them guidelines on what they can and cannot do, right? So there'll be more accountability, more transparency. They'll have to publish. I think Australia just did this. You'll have to publish the names of your agents.
Right.
Like it's public information, like XYZ college, list out all your agents. It's going to be on the website. Now we know who's playing with whom and who's misbehaving where, right? So, like sunshine is the best disinfectant, right? Shine some light on this, remove the little smoke screens that we have, the little lies that we're telling ourselves, and make it transparent. And I'll tell you a funny anecdote. Like there are people out there, like there are agents out there. So the school hires an edtech agency, edtech hires a sub agent hires a sub agent, all the way down until the last guy in the chain is just some random dude standing outside a bus station, handing out flyers. He couldn't point to a he couldn't look at a map and point to where Canada is. Okay.
Right.
So that's what we're dealing with. And that last person is invisible to everyone. Who knows what she's
Right.
doing?
My only I don't necessarily disagree with anything that you just said. My only counter to that is even if you get rid of the aggregators,
Mhm.
there still is the problem of subagents, right? And
Yes.
I think this was even a problem before aggregators, right? So I'll just give a super quick explanation for those who might not even know what some of these terms mean, which is an aggregator is basically an online platform that kind of makes all this commission like a marketplace, right? So a study abroad agent used to have to sign agreements with every college or university in order to send them students and actually earn commission. And what's happened is we have these aggregators who go and they play the middleman, as Madhur was saying. They'll go sign agreements with all the schools in Canada. And it's basically now a marketplace where the study abroad agents just have to sign up to this aggregator. And now overnight, they have access to earning commission from all these colleges and universities. Now, the only problem that I see, excuse me, is there still, I think, would be a problem with subagents where you have,
Yeah.
let's say, a big study abroad agency, right?
Yep.
ABC Study Abroad Corp.
Correct.
And they are, a private company. They're not an aggregator. They're not giving access to themselves as a marketplace, but they have agreements with all these colleges and universities. And Madhur walks into their office and says, "Hey, I can bring you 500 students a year. Can you just split the commission with me? Because I don't want to go sign agreements with all these schools." And the company says, "Sure. Hey, it's extra money we wouldn't have got anyways." And this Madhur guy seems, smart enough, whatever. Like, how do we tackle that problem?
So this problem is present today. Like all the big education agencies, study abroad agencies in India, they do have sub agents. It's like that last mile problem, like
Right.
Amazon. They have this big corporate office, they have a big distribution center, and then they have these little mom and pop guys with packages in their truck, right? Just doing the last mile distribution. That's where the problem is. So yes, any agency, once it gets big enough, will have sub agents because it gives them more reach, right? But the agency itself has a direct contract with direct transparency with the educational institution. So there is some level of accountability. If there is a student pointing out that, I was defrauded, I was told this and this lies. I was taken advantage of. They fleeced me out of these many dollars. Then this agency is supposed to be held accountable. Like the
Right.
more drill down we can go to the last mile guy, the better. We can never go down to the absolute bottom, right? Because the absolute bottom guy is standing outside a bus station handing out flyers. Remember, he probably doesn't even speak English. So yeah, you can never get the last one right. But again, I'll go back to my Amazon example, right? If the Amazon delivery driver, the last mile guy, he's a private person. He's not an Amazon employee, he's a sub agent. But Amazon knows when he's delivered your package late. Because
Right. And
Amazon,
I
he
guess the
follows.
argument there is if he's late too many times, they can go to the company or the supplier that's employing him and be like, "Hey, this is your last warning. Otherwise, you're losing your whole contract," kind of thing. So,
Correct. He's
yeah,
fully operating. He's a separate entity. He's a contractor, whatever. But the device he has on his hand is on Amazon. When he delivers, he takes a picture. It goes to Amazon. That package was delivered, and then the website gets updated. Package delivered. So there are ways to integrate the entire pipeline into your ecosystem. Of course, it takes a lot of willpower and investment to do that. It can be done. Will it be done? Probably not. But there are ways to do it for people who want to do it. And
right,
again, don't do it for long enough. Someone else will make that choice for you, and you're not going to like it. Right. So,
right. I do think we're probably going to be heading in a decent direction with the attestation letter system and the trusted, trusted institution framework, which I have mixed feelings about. But anyways, what I do want to talk about too, Madhur, because this has been great in terms of at the study permit level. But
yeah.
I'd love to talk to you about the permanent residence level, especially express entry, for two reasons. Number one, I think express entry has gotten very difficult to navigate in the last
Sure.
year, even as immigration professionals, which we can get into. And number two, a byproduct of this issue with international students is we now have something like 1 million international students, and a big proportion of them probably will struggle or not be able to get PR, which is typically the main reason they come to study in Canada, right? What are your thoughts on PR and the current, the current state of express entry?
So as you said, these people who are struggling, I'm seeing them every day. I'm having those calls. I'm getting those messages, panicked, disappointed. I'm out of options. What do I do? So yep, we're already starting to see all those people struggling and falling off the grid, right? Now, sorry, the question is, what do we do? Okay, first of all, I
Or
feel
what do
bad.
you think? What do you think as well?
Yeah, I feel bad for, like, look, there was a bit of an unwritten social contract that Canada offered. It's a social contract. It's not a legal contract. It's like the whole, if you work hard, you'll be successful. That social contract. There was this contract with immigrants. It's like, if you come here, you study at a Canadian institution, you work in Canada for a bit, you have good scores, you stay at your best behavior, no criminal record, we'll get you your PR. No guarantees, but wink, wink. It's a social contract. I take you take care of my labor needs. I'll take care. That one we have reneged. Canada has reneged on that social contract. I feel bad for these guys because they came not with an assurance, but with an understanding that that is the contract. Canada flipped 180 on that. Suddenly, it's like, yeah, okay, you know, it's all temporary. You said temporary intent in your student visa application. I'm going to hold you to it all of a sudden, while also making statements about like how we have such labor needs. International students are the best people to fill those labor needs. So they're saying two different things. Right? They're saying things about labor needs, international students, and all to lure them in. But once they're in, we're telling them, "Oh, this is a temporary intent. Who told you student visa leads to PR? You got to study here and go right back." And at the same time, saying, "Oh, we're going to take 500K student, 500K immigrants next year." So, well, which is it, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is, what's the point of sending these kids back? These people, you do need 500K, right? You put it on your plan, right? If why would you not take your 500K out of these people? Why would you not create pathways for these people to become PRs? Right? So there is a lot of incoherence in policy versus execution, which I'm not surprised by. Okay. But but the second okay, but that's where we were. Where we are now is that there are fewer slots, too many people. A lot of them are going to go back. What can be done?
Right. Not even necessarily fewer slots, just like the number of PR slots has held relatively flat,
Mhm.
and the number of international students has not, right, in the last 7, 8 years. The other thing too, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is like IRCC, okay, they created these new, industry specific draws, which I think is a good idea, but they still provide no transparency into what's coming ahead, right? So it's even just very hard to plan, right? Like I don't know if you can share some of your experiences. You get on these calls with clients and they're like, "Hey, what can I expect for the next few months in Express Entry?" And you're like, "I have no freaking idea," right? Cuz you might as well flip a coin, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like there's so much uncertainty. Like, will the trades draw exist 6 months from now, or will the transportation category draw exist 6 months from now, or will that be phased out and some other industry draw will be replaced in its place,
Or
right?
are they even going to do what? Like they made all this fuss. I like I said, I actually think the industry specific draws are a great idea. They just haven't really
Yeah,
used them much, right? So
exactly.
what's
There
the
was
point?
another post I wrote where we're crying so much about, oh, construction, we don't have construction workers, skilled trades, and so on. But if you look at the number of draws that are in skilled trades, there's less than 5% of the total intake. What are you doing? Why
Right.
are you doing massive 7,000 people draws in general category and doing just 5% intake on the trades part, right? Those numbers don't make any sense. French is going gangbusters. I mean, are we getting French accountants, whereas the need is for, bricklayers? So these numbers don't make sense with the labor market trends. There was another news report recently about having fewer than 1 in 40 intakes in the PEI-PNP program were people with construction or skilled trades. Fewer than
Hmm.
1 in 40. So these programs are not, the execution of these programs is not aligned with the stated intention or needs of the labor market. And again, coming back to that previous one, so as a consultant, people are asking me, what what should I do to get PR, right? I would say, okay, you have a background in transportation. uh, you were a truck driver. Maybe if you study something, transportation, logistics management, something, a job in that field, you might get into the transportation draw, right? But here's the question. We don't know if the transportation draw will still be there. We don't know how many intakes it will have. We don't know how long that'll run, or what NOCs within that draw will stay, right? Because they keep flipping the list of NOCs as well. I'm talking about
Hmm.
Ontario. Ontario PNP has a skilled trades draw, right? They say they publish a list of NOCs that will be picked for granting a PNP nomination. That list keeps changing, right? So there was somebody who talked to me about like, hey, I want to go get 1 year of skilled work experience in in one of those NOCs so that I'll be eligible for an Ontario PNP. So this
Right.
guy went and joined a bakery, right? He worked as a bakery chef. Then at the end of 1 year, he was like, yes, I have 1 year of Ontario skilled work experience as a baker. They just stopped doing draws for bakery NOCs. They just removed it from March onwards, right? Now this guy is
Yeah.
like feels
That's
cheated because of
brutal.
so much. Now he's looking at, okay, what other job can I get 1 year experience so that I'll again be qualified for that? And like a list of NOCs is in so much flux that I couldn't guarantee you that you come back to me 1 year from now with some other experience and maybe that one will be gone. So I just don't know what to tell you, but I can just give you probabilities, can't give you any guarantees.
Yeah.
And maybe by the time you catch up on all this work experience, your work permit might expire, right? So it's just these
Yeah.
moving targets, moving goalposts. We're just not giving anybody any certainty on anything. That's not good.
It's such a shame, especially because I had my fair share of clients who came to me last minute, right? No planning, my permit's expiring in 2 months, blah, blah, blah. And that's going to happen with some people. But all these smart people who are willing to plan years in advance, taking the right programs, getting the right jobs in the right knock codes, and then even though it is a priority at one point and it's part of these programs at one point, and just still, not much assurance. I think the other word that you said earlier in your answer that I think is the key problem is alignment, right? There's no alignment between the international students we're bringing in, the college and university programs that we should be promoting, and the labor market, right? And then, like you said, they put in place these industry specific draws, these PNP programs, but they're not even really used that much. So what's the point? And you're just causing more confusion in the meantime.
I think this whole attestation letter framework will bring some more alignment. Because look,
I hope so.
if the province only has 150,000 uh, attestation letter slots to issue, then it will be more judicious with which course and which college and which community it issues those letters to,
But
right?
but is the province going to be able to pick the course, or are they going to say, "Hey, Conestoga, you get 5,000. Go have
And
fun with it." Right? I
yeah,
I don't know. I guess maybe we'll have to wait and see.
that's the fear, right? Like then Constoga goes and gives it all to business management people, and the
Yeah.
nursing program sits empty, right? So the province, in an ideal condition, will say, okay, I need 100,000 caretakers in the next 5 years and 70,000 construction workers. So if I have only 100K to student visas to allocate, I'm going to tell Conestoga, you get 5,000 for your nursing and welding program only. Okay, the next one, Fanshawe, you get it for this and this program only. And
Right.
that way the grads coming out of these courses will be more aligned with the economy. And if they're not, then you can easily track back at where the misalignment started, and that was in the allocation of these work permits, these study permit
Right.
slots. So there'll
I
be a
just wonder if we can have faith in that, right? Because
yeah,
again, the province gets X amount of letters. They probably, each year they want that number to go up. So they want the
yeah,
most approved. So they're just going
yeah,
to give it to the schools, and the
yeah,
schools are going to think about their bottom line. So they're going to pick the programs with the highest approval rating and the highest dollar per student
yeah.
value. And then maybe years goes by and it's mostly Bizadmin students again.
Oh
And
yeah.
then, but then the schools say, "Hey, listen, we got them all approved." And then the province goes to IRCC and say, "Hey, we got them all approved. It's not our fault. You're not doing industry specific draws. What do you want us to do?" You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
just like a vicious circle of nothing being solved.
Yeah. And so yeah, if the provinces don't allocate their attestation letters according to at the course level, not at the college level, at the course level, if they don't do it, it's going to be a complete waste because the
Well, it'll
course
be
will
interesting to see.
because the margin, like look at the margin on a business admin course is huge. You just need somebody to come, deliver a few slides. Whereas on
Right.
a nursing one, you have to have actual infrastructure where nurses are trained. But on a welding course, you have to have an actual workshop. So the margins on the business one, you just need a PowerPoint slide. So it's gonna lead to a lot of misbehavior. And even then, even if these provinces graduate people in the right courses, in the right fields, what about the federal government? If they're not doing the draws more judiciously, like taking a lot of construction people in, taking a lot of agriculture people in, if the federal government is not doing their part in absorbing these people as PRs, then again, all these high value grads will fall off the grid and go away. So there are so many levels of coordination needed. And just like you, I'm skeptical if these people will be able to pull it off, especially given how rushed the rollout is. In
Right.
They're being asked to come up with this whole infrastructure framework in under 2 months. Um, I don't think a bureaucrat in the Education Ministry of Ontario is going to spend weekends and nights figuring out the best, trades program and nursing programs to allocate their attestation letters to. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, that that picking a number out of a hat process will happen again. They're going to say, okay, 10,000 to you, 5,000 to you. You get a sweater, you get a.
Uh-huh.
That's what's
Yeah,
going to.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. I hope it plays out. Like you said, I don't know if we can have too much faith based on how the last few years have gone. Also, That's gotta be tough. If you're in the education ministry, you have all of these colleges and programs, and universities vying for, "Hey, this is why we should get, this is why we should get." That's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard to do that, like, in defense of these provincial governments. Gonna be
There's
very difficult, even just to come up with a fair way to divide those letters in less than 2
There's
months. So
gonna
anyways,
be so much jockeying. These attestation letters
oh,
are
yeah.
worth their weight in gold.
Oh, yeah.
Those letters are the LMIAs of education industry.
Well, think about it. Each one of those letters is probably worth anywhere from like $15,000 to $30,000 a year in tuition, right? If you
Exactly.
look at the raw numbers, we can come up with hard numbers of how much these are worth, right? So it's crazy.
What these No, I was just saying these letters are the LMIAs of the education industry. The way these fraudsters sell an LMIA for 15, 30K, the same way there's a 30K value attached to it. Not that there would be a sale of it, but there would be intense jockeying and lobbying but from every school, trying to influence every government official. And I'm not sure everything is going to be kosher. There's going to be a lot of under the table deal making there.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they continue on a better path. I guess we'll have to wait and see. My last question, Madhur, is what would you do? So I've asked you as minister over the study permits. What would you do in the next 12 months with regards to express entry?
I would increase the intakes for the trade specific, those occupation specific draws, because the numbers are just out of whack. Right? The economy needs 100,000 construction people. We're picking out 3,000. Those
Right.
guys are not going to come through the general category. They don't have enough scores. They don't have enough education. What are you doing? Increase those intakes. Make those categories the 5,000 draws, the 7,000 person draws, and tamp down on the other parts. Right. The second thing I would like to see is the LMIA process getting easier. It is so burdensome right now for an employer to sponsor an LMIA. They want to keep people here, but have you, I mean, of course, you've seen the LMIA process. It's like you have to advertise for 4 months, you have to spend $10,000, you get an LMIA 3 months down the line. And why would an employer do an LMIA? Why? Like, why? Even
Hmm.
like, I you're making it so burdensome, and you're bringing in ESDC, which has its own agenda. Does not care about ESDC. Does not care about employers. They do not care about IRCC for sure. They're like rival sibling. They have a very adversarial attitude, right? Like, why should we approve this work permit? So, like, I would make sponsoring a worker much, much more easier. And the third
Right.
thing I would do is probably easing up on the LMIA requirement. The thing is, like, look, I spoke to somebody recently who's working at a big bank for the past 2 years. The bank is more than happy to keep her indefinitely, right? But she cannot get her PR invite because the bank doesn't want to do an LMIA, right? Is there
Hmm.
any reason for this person to be sent back to India just because she couldn't get that LMIA? The banks surely want to keep her. Right? The person was educated here, young, English speaking, no criminal record, has a job, paying taxes, everything. But hey, you can't get an LMIA, so we're going to send you back. So this LMIA bottleneck created by IRCC and ESDC, I would try to ease off on that. It's a very complicated policy, right?
Yeah.
So I would find ways to ease up on the LMIA, making it less cumbersome, more accessible, or waive some of those requirements, right? Ins
Yeah.
If you worked here for a few years, you get a lot more points rather than somebody who's never been here but somehow managed to find a hookup for his LMIA. So I
Yeah.
would
I
recommend.
I completely agree. I think the LMI and work permit is the unsung potential hero to every problem related to Canadian immigration and labor shortages. I think if they do exactly what you said, they make it easier, they make it quicker for genuine companies to get LMIAs. Half, if not more, of the problems go away overnight. But anyways, I've been preaching that for probably a year or two now and hasn't worked.
Same.
I'm not going to stop, but maybe one day. Anyways, Madhur, this has been a great, nicely wide-ranging conversation.
Mm.
Obviously, glad we covered the international student stuff, which has been
Yeah.
very topical lately, and how it relates to express entry. If anybody does want to get in touch with you, maybe learn more, where do you recommend that they go?
So I'm most active on LinkedIn, right? So drop me a message, send me a connection request, follow. LinkedIn is a great way to reach me. Otherwise, my website is North Start Immigration. It's Start, START, northstartimmigration.com. Book a consulting call. There's an email ID there and feel free to reach out.
Awesome. I would definitely highly recommend giving Madhur a follow on LinkedIn. He's the rare breed who really does share his emotion, not well, maybe emotional is not the right word, but you do get pretty fired up with your passion and your opinions that you're sharing on LinkedIn, which I find that can be rare these days, right, on
I,
LinkedIn. So,
I lack a filter.
hey, that can make for great content.
I've
Anyways,
yeah.
yeah, we will include links to his LinkedIn profile and website in the description below if you're watching on YouTube or whichever podcast platform you're listening on. Madhur, thank you again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we had this conversation.